The French Revolution, A History. By Thomas Carlyle. 1837. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Book 3.v. Terror, the Order of the Day. Chapter 3.5.I. Rushing Down. We are now, therefore, got to that black precipitous abyss, whither all things have long been tending, where, having now arrived on the giddy verge, they hurl down, in confused ruin, headlong, pell-mell, down, till sans-culotism have consummated itself. And in this wondrous French Revolution, as in a doomsday, a world have been rapidly, if not born again, yet destroyed and engulfed. Terror has long been terrible, but to the actors themselves it has now become manifest that their appointed course is one of terror, and they say, be it so. Que la terreur soit l'ordre du jour. So many centuries, say only from Hugh Capet downwards, had been adding together, century transmitting it with increase to century, the sum of wickedness, of falsehood, oppression of man by man. Kings were sinners, and priests were, and people. Open scoundrels rode triumphant, bediademed, becoroneted, bemitred, or the still fataler species of secret scoundrels, in their fair-sounding formulas, speciosities, respectabilities, hollow within, the race of quacks was grown many as the sands of the sea. Till at length such a sum of quackery had accumulated itself as, in brief, the earth and the heavens were weary of. Slow seemed the day of settlement, coming on, all imperceptible, across the bluster and fanfare native courtierisms, conquering heroisms, most Christian grand monarchisms. Well-beloved pompadourisms, yet behold it was always coming, behold it has come, suddenly, unlooked for by any man. The harvest of long centuries was ripening and whitening so rapidly of late, and now it is grown white, and is reaped rapidly, as it were, in one day. Reaped, in this reign of terror, and carried home, to Hades and the pit. Unhappy sons of Adam, it is ever so, and never do they know it, nor will they know it. With cheerfully smooth countenances, day after day, and generation after generation, they, calling cheerfully to one another, well speed ye, are at work, sowing the wind. And yet, as God lives, they shall reap the whirlwind. No other thing, we say, is possible, since God is a truth and his world is a truth. History, however, in dealing with this reign of terror, has had her own difficulties. While the phenomenon continued in its primary state, as mere horrors of the French Revolution, there was abundance to be said and shrieked. With and also without profit. Heaven knows there were terrors and horrors enough, yet that was not all the phenomenon. Nay, more properly, that was not the phenomenon at all, but rather was the shadow of it, the negative part of it. And now, in a new stage of the business, when history, ceasing to shriek, would try rather to include under her old forms of speech or speculation this new amazing thing, that so some accredited scientific law of nature might suffice for the unexpected product of nature, and history might get to speak of it articulately, and draw inferences and profit from it. In this new stage, history, we must say, babbles and flounders perhaps in a still painfuller manner. Take, for example, the latest form of speech we have seen propounded on the subject is adequate to it, almost in these months, by our worthy Emrou, in his Histoire Parlementaire. The latest and the strangest, that the French Revolution was a dead-lift effort, after 1800 years of preparation, to realize the Christian religion. Unity, indivisibility, brotherhood or death did indeed stand printed on all houses of the living, also, on cemeteries, or houses of the dead, stood printed, by order of Procureur Chaumette, here is eternal sleep, but a Christian religion realized by the guillotine and death eternal, is suspect to me, as Robespierre was wont to say, mest suspect. Alas, no, Emrou. A gospel of brotherhood, not according to any of the four old evangelists, and calling on men to repent, and amend each his own wicked existence, that they might be saved, but a gospel rather, as we often hint, according to a new fifth evangelist Jean-Jacques, calling on men to amend each the whole world's wicked existence, and be saved by making the Constitution. A thing different and distant toto coelho, as they say, the whole breadth of the sky, and further if possible. It is thus, however, that history, and indeed all human speech and reason does yet, what Father Adam began life by doing, strive to name the new things it sees of nature's producing, often helplessly enough. But what if history were to admit, for once, that all the names and theorems yet known to her fall short? That this grand product of nature was even grand, and new in that it came not to range itself under old recorded laws of nature at all, but to disclose new ones? In that case, history, renouncing the pretension to name it at present, will look honestly at it, and name what she can of it. Any approximation to the right name has value. Were the right name itself once here, the thing is known thenceforth, the thing is then ours, and can be dealt with. Now surely not realization, of Christianity, or of aught earthly, do we discern in this reign of terror, in this French Revolution of which it is the consummating destruction rather we discern, of all that was destructible. It is as if 25 millions, risen at length into the Pythian mood, had stood up simultaneously to say, with a sound which goes through far lands and times, that this untruth of an existence had become insupportable. O ye hypocrisies and speciosities, royal mantles, cardinal plush cloaks, ye credos, formulas, respectabilities, fair painted sepulchres full of dead men's bones, behold, ye appear to us to be altogether a lie. Yet our life is not a lie, yet our hunger and misery is not a lie. Behold, we lift up, one and all, our 25 million right hands, and take the heavens and the earth and also the pit of Tophet to witness, that either ye shall be abolished, or else we shall be abolished. No inconsiderable oath, truly, forming, as has been often said, the most remarkable transaction in these last 1,000 years. Wherefrom likewise there follow, and will follow, results. The fulfillment of this oath, that is to say, the black desperate battle of men against their whole condition and environment, a battle, alas, withal, against the sin and darkness that was in themselves as in others, this is the reign of terror. Transcendental despair was the purport of it, though not consciously so. False hopes, fraternity, political millennium, and what not, we have always seen, but the unseen heart of the whole, the transcendental despair, was not false, neither has it been of no effect. Despair, pushed far enough, completes the circle, so to speak, and becomes a kind of genuine productive hope again. Doctrine of fraternity, out of old Catholicism, does, it is true, very strangely in the vehicle of a Jean-Jacques Evangel, suddenly plump down out of its cloud firmament, and from a theorem determined to make itself a practice. But just so do all creeds, intentions, customs, knowledges, thoughts and things, which the French have, suddenly plump down, Catholicism, classicism, sentimentalism, cannibalism, all isms that make up man in France, are rushing and roaring in that gulf, and the theorem has become a practice, and whatsoever cannot swim sinks. Not evangelist Jean-Jacques alone, there is not a village schoolmaster but has contributed his quota, do we not thou one another, according to the free peoples of antiquity? The French patriot, in red Phrygian nightcap of liberty, christens his poor little red infant Cato, censor, or else of Utica. Gracchus has become Beowulf and edits newspapers, Mutius Scaevola, cordwainer of that ilk, presides in the section Mutius Scaevola, and in brief, there is a world wholly jumbling itself, to try what will swim. Wherefore we will, at all events, call this reign of terror a very strange one. Dominant Sansculotism makes, as it were, free arena, one of the strangest temporary states humanity was ever seen in. A nation of men, full of wants and void of habits. The old habits are gone to wreck because they were old. Men, driven forward by necessity and fierce Pythian madness, have, on the spur of the instant, to devise for the want the way of satisfying it. The wanted tumbles down, by imitation, by invention, the unwanted hastily builds itself up. What the French national head has in it comes out, if not a great result, surely one of the strangest. Neither shall the reader fancy that it was all blank, this reign of terror, far from it. How many hammermen and squaremen, bakers and brewers, washers and ringers, over this France, must ply their old daily work, let the government be one of terror or one of joy. In this Paris there are 23 theatres nightly, some count as many as 60 places of dancing. The playwright manufactures pieces of a strictly republican character. Ever fresh novel garbage, as of old, fodders the circulating libraries. The cesspool of agio, now in the time of paper money, works with a vivacity unexampled, unimagined, exhales from itself sudden fortunes, like Aladdin palaces, really a kind of miraculous fata morganas, since you can live in them for a time. Terror is as a sable ground, on which the most variegated of scenes paints itself. In startling transitions, in colors all intensated, the sublime, the ludicrous, the horrible succeed one another, or rather, in crowding tumult, accompany one another. Here, accordingly, if anywhere, the 100 tongues, which the old poets often clamor for, were of supreme service. In defect of any such organ on our part, let the reader stir up his own imaginative organ, let us snatch for him this or the other significant glimpse of things, in the fittest sequence we can. Chapter 3.52. Death. In the early days of November, there is one transient glimpse of things that is to be noted, the last transit to his long home of Philippe d'Orléans-Égalité. Philippe was decreed accused, along with the Girondins, much to his and their surprise, but not tried along with them. They are doomed and dead, some 3 days, when Philippe, after his long half-year of durance at Marseille, arrives in Paris. It is, as we calculate, the 3rd of November 1793. On which same day, 2 notable female prisoners are also put in ward there, Dame Dubarry and Josephine Bournay. Dame Wylam, Countess Dubarry, unfortunate female, had returned from London. They snatched her, not only as ex-harlot of a Wylam majesty, and therefore suspect, but as having furnished the emigrants with money. Contemporaneously with whom, there comes the wife of Bournay, soon to be the widow, she that is Josephine Tasker Bournay, that shall be Josephine Empress Bonaparte, for a black divineress of the tropics prophesied long since that she should be a queen and more. Likewise, in the same hours, poor Adam Lux, nigh turned in the head, who, according to Foster, has taken no food these 3 weeks, marches to the guillotine for his pamphlet on Charlotte Corday. He sprang to the scaffold, said he died for her with great joy. Amid such fellow travelers does Philippe arrive. 4. Be the month named Brumaire year 2 of liberty, or November year 1793 of slavery, the guillotine goes always, guillotine va toujours. Enough, Philippe's indictment is soon drawn, his jury soon convinced. He finds himself made guilty of royalism, conspiracy and much else. Nay, it is a guilt in him that he voted Louis's death, though he answers, I voted in my soul and conscience. The doom he finds is death forthwith. This present 6th dim day of November is the last day that Philippe is to see. Philippe, says Montgaillard, thereupon called for breakfast, sufficiency of oysters, 2 cutlets, best part of an excellent bottle of claret, and consumed the same with apparent relish. A revolutionary judge, or some official convention emissary, then arrived, to signify that he might still do the state some service by revealing the truth about a plot or two. Philippe answered that, on him, in the past things had come to, the state had, he thought, small claim, that nevertheless, in the interest of liberty, he, having still some leisure on his hands, was willing, were a reasonable question asked him, to give reasonable answer. And so, says Montgaillard, he leaned his elbow on the mantelpiece, and conversed in an undertone, with great seeming composure, till the leisure was done, or the emissary went his ways. At the door of the conciergerie, Philippe's attitude was erect and easy, almost commanding. It is 5 years, all but a few days, since Philippe, within these same stone walls, stood up with an air of graciosity, and asked King Louis, whether it was a royal session, then, or a bed of justice. Oh heaven! 3 poor blackguards were to ride and die with him, some say, they objected to such company, and had to be flung in, neck and heels, but it seems not true. Objecting or not objecting, the gallows vehicle gets under way. Philippe's dress is remarked for its elegance, green frock, waistcoat of white piqué, yellow buckskins, boots clear as Warren, his air, as before, entirely composed, impassive, not to say easy and Brumley polite. Through street after street, slowly, amid execrations, past the Palais Égalité whilom Palais Royal. The cruel populace stopped him there, some minutes. Dame de Buffon, it is said, looked out on him, in Jezebel headtire. Along the ashlar wall, there ran these words in huge tricolor print, Republic one and indivisible, liberty, equality, fraternity or death, national property. Philippe's eyes flashed hellfire, one instant, but the next instant it was gone, and he sat impassive, Brumley and polite. On the scaffold, Samson was for drawing of his boots. Tush, said Philippe, they will come better off after, let us have done de Pekins new. So Philippe was not without virtue, then? God forbid that there should be any living man without it. He had the virtue to keep living for 45 years, other virtues perhaps more than we know of. Probably no mortal ever had such things recorded of him, such facts, and also such lies. For he was a Jacobin prince of the blood, consider what a combination. Also, unlike any Nero, any Borgia, he lived in the age of pamphlets. Enough for us, chaos has reabsorbed him, may it late or never bear his like again. Brave young Orleans Égalité, deprived of all, only not deprived of himself, is gone to Coria in the Grisons, under the name of Corby, to teach mathematics. The Égalité family is at the darkest depths of the nadir. A far nobler victim follows, one who will claim remembrance from several centuries, Jean-Marie Flippon, the wife of Roland. Queenly, sublime in her uncomplaining sorrow, seemed she to Raouf in her prison. Something more than is usually found in the looks of women painted itself, says Raouf, in those large black eyes of hers, full of expression and sweetness. She spoke to me often, at the grate, we were all attentive round her, in a sort of admiration and astonishment. She expressed herself with a purity, with a harmony and prosody that made her language like music, of which the ear could never have enough. Her conversation was serious, not cold, coming from the mouth of a beautiful woman, it was frank and courageous as that of a great man. And yet her maid said, before you, she collects her strength, but in her own room, she will sit 3 hours sometimes, leaning on the window and weeping. She had been in prison, liberated once, but recaptured the same hour, Ever since the 1st of June, in agitation and uncertainty, which has gradually settled down into the last stern certainty, that of death. In the Albaye prison, she occupied Charlotte Corday's apartment. Here in the conciergerie, she speaks with Raouf, with ex-minister Clavier, calls the beheaded 22 Nos Amis, our friends whom we are soon to follow. During these 5 months, those memoirs of hers were written, which all the world still reads. But now, on the 8th of November, clad in white, says Raouf, with her long black hair hanging down to her girdle, she has gone to the judgment bar. She returned with a quick step, lifted her finger, to signify to us that she was doomed. Her eyes seemed to have been wet. Fouquier Tinville's questions had been brutal, offended female honor flung them back on him, with scorn not without tears. And now, short preparation soon done, she shall go her last road. There went with her a certain Lamarche, director of assignat printing, whose dejection she endeavored to cheer. Arrived at the foot of the scaffold, she asked for pen and paper, to write the strange thoughts that were rising in her, a remarkable request, which was refused. Looking at the Statue of Liberty which stands there, she says bitterly, "O Liberty, what things are done in thy name?" For Lamarche's sake, she will die first. Show him how easy it is to die, contrary to the order, said Samson. Pshaw, you cannot refuse the last request of a lady, and Samson yielded. Noble white vision, with its high queenly face, its soft proud eyes, long black hair flowing down to the girdle, and as brave a heart as ever beat in woman's bosom. Like a white Grecian statue, serenely complete, she shines in that black wreck of things, long memorable. Honor to great nature who, in Paris city, in the era of noble sentiment and Pompidourism, can make a Jean flip on, and nourish her to clear perennial womanhood, though but on logics, encyclopedias, and the gospel according to Jean-Jacques. Biography will long remember that trait of asking for a pen to write the strange thoughts that were rising in her. It is as a little light beam, shedding softness, and a kind of sacredness, over all that preceded, so in her too there was an unnameable. She too was a daughter of the infinite, there were mysteries which philosophism had not dreamt of. She left long written counsels to her little girl, she said her husband would not survive her. Still crueler was the fate of poor Bailly, first national president, first mayor of Paris, doomed now for royalism, Fayettism, for that red flag business of the Champ de Mars, one may say in general, for leaving his astronomy to meddle with revolution. It is the 10th of November 1793, a cold bitter drizzling rain, as poor Bailly is led through the streets, howling populace covering him with curses, with mud, waving over his face a burning or smoking mockery of a red flag. Silent, unpitied, sits the innocent old man. Slow faring through the sleety drizzle, they have got to the Champ de Mars, not there. Vociferates the cursing populace, such blood ought not to stain an altar of the fatherland, not there, but on that dung heap by the riverside. So vociferates the cursing populace, officiality gives ear to them. The guillotine is taken down, though with hands numbed by the sleety drizzle, is carried to the riverside, is there set up again, with slow numbness, pulse after pulse still counting itself out in the old man's weary heart. For hours long, amid curses and bitter frost rain. Bailly, thou tremblest, said one. Mon ami, it is for cold, said Bailly, c'est de foi. Crueler end had no mortal. Some days afterwards, Roland, hearing the news of what happened on the 8th, embraces his kind friends at Rouen, leaves their kind house which had given him refuge, goes forth, with farewell too sad for tears. On the morrow morning, 16th of the month, some 4 leagues from Rouen, Paris ward, near Bourg Baudouin, in M. Normand's avenue, there is seen sitting leant against a tree, the figure of rigorous wrinkled man, stiff now in the rigor of death, a cane sword run through his heart, and at his feet this writing, Whoever thou art that findest me lying, respect my remains, they are those of a man who consecrated all his life to being useful, and who has died as he lived, virtuous and honest. Not fear, but indignation, made me quit my retreat, on learning that my wife had been murdered. I wished not to remain longer on an earth polluted with crimes. Barnave's appearance at the Revolutionary Tribunal was of the bravest, but it could not stead him. They have sent for him from Grenoble, to pay the common smart, vain as eloquence, forensic or other, against the dumb clotho-shears of Tinville. He is still but 32, this Barnave, and has known such changes. Short while ago, we saw him at the top of Fortune's wheel, his word a law to all patriots, and now surely he is at the bottom of the wheel, in stormful altercation with a Tinville tribunal, which is dooming him to die. And Pétion, once also of the extreme left, and named Pétion Virtue, where is he? Civilly dead, in the caves of Saint Emilion, to be devoured of dogs. And Robespierre, who rode along with him on the shoulders of the people, is in committee of Salou, civilly alive, not to live always. So giddy swift whirls and spins this immeasurable tormentum of a revolution, wild booming, not to be followed by the eye. Barnave, on the scaffold, stamped his foot, and looking upwards was heard to ejaculate, "This then is my reward?" Deputy ex-procureur Manuel is already gone, and Deputy Acellin, famed also in August and September, is about to go, and Rabaut, discovered treacherously between his two walls, and the brother of Rabaut. National deputies not a few. And generals, the memory of General Custine cannot be defended by his son is already guillotined. Custine the ex-noble was replaced by Achard the plebeian, he too could not prosper in the north, for him too there was no mercy, he has perished in the Place de la Revolution, after attempting suicide in prison. And Generals Baron, Bornet, Brunet, whatsoever general prospers not, tough old Luckner, with his eyes grown rheumy, Alsatian Westerman, valiant and diligent in La Vendée, none of them can, as the psalmist sings, his soul from death deliver. How busy are the revolutionary committees, sections with their 40 halfpence a day. Arrestment on arrestment falls quick, continual, followed by death. Ex-Minister Clavière has killed himself in prison. Ex-Minister Lebrun, seized in a hayloft, under the disguise of a working man, is instantly conducted to death. Nay, withal, is it not what Barrère calls coining money on the Place de la Révolution? For always the property of the guilty, if property he have, is confiscated. To avoid accidents, we even make a law that suicide shall not defraud us, that a criminal who kills himself does not the less incur forfeiture of goods. Let the guilty tremble, therefore, and the suspect, and the rich, and in a word all manner of choleric men. Luxembourg Palace, once Monsieur's, has become a huge loathsome prison. Chantilly Palace too, once Condé's, and their landlords are at Blankenberg, on the wrong side of the Rhine. In Paris are now some 12 prisons, in France some 44,000, thitherward, thick as brown leaves in autumn, rustle and travel the suspect. Shaken down by revolutionary committees, they are swept thitherward, as into their storehouse, to be consumed by Samson and Tinville. The guillotine goes not ill, la guillotine n'y va pas mal. Chapter 3.53. Destruction. The suspect may well tremble, but how much more the open rebels, the Girondin cities of the south. Revolutionary army has gone forth, under Ronson the playwright, 6,000 strong, in red nightcap, in tricolor waistcoat, in black shag trousers, black shag spencer, with enormous mustachios, enormous saber, in Carmagnole complete, and has portable guillotines. Representative Carrier has got to Nantes, by the edge of blazing La Vendée, which Rossignol has literally set on fire. Carrier will try what captives you make, what accomplices they have, royalist or Girondin, his guillotine goes always, va toujours, and his wool-capped company of Marat. Little children are guillotined, and aged men. Swift as the machine is, it will not serve. The headsman and all his valets sink, worn down with work, declare that the human muscles can no more. Whereupon you must try fusillading, to which perhaps still frightfuler methods may succeed. In Brest, to like purpose, rules Jean Bon Saint-André, with an army of red nightcaps. In Bordeaux rules Tallien, with his Isabeau and henchmen, Guadets, Cusseys, Salices, Mayfall, the bloody pike and nightcap bearing supreme sway, the guillotine coining money. Bristly fox-haired Tallien, once able editor, still young in years, is now become most gloomy, potent, a Pluto on earth, and has the keys of Tartarus. One remarks, however, that a certain Senorina Cabarrus, or call her rather Senora and wedded not yet widowed Dame de Fontenay, brown beautiful woman, daughter of Cabarrus the Spanish merchant, has softened the red bristly countenance, pleading for herself and friends, and prevailing. The keys of Tartarus, or any kind of power, are something to a woman. Gloomy Pluto himself is not insensible to love. Like a new Proserpine, she, by this red gloominess, is gathered, and, they say, softens his stone heart a little. Meunier, at Orange in the south, Le Bon, at Arras in the north, become world's wonders. Jacobin Popular Tribunal, with its national representative, perhaps where Girondin Popular Tribunal had lately been, rises here and rises there, wheresoever needed. Fouches, Maynets, Barrases, Frères scour the southern departments, like reapers, with their guillotine sickle. Many are the laborers, great is the harvest. By the 100 and the 1,000, men's lives are cropped, cast like brands into the burning. Marseille is taken, and put under martial law. Lo, at Marseille, what one besmutted red-bearded corn-ear is this which they cut, one gross man, we mean, with copper-studded face, plenteous beard, or beard stubble, of a tile color? By Nemesis and the Fatal Sisters, it is Jordan Couptate. Him they have clutched, in these martial law districts, him too, with their national razor, their rasoir national, they sternly shave away. Lo now is Jordan the headsman's own head, lo as Deschutz's and Varigny's, which he sent on pikes, in the insurrection of women. No more shall he, as a copper portent, be seen gyrating through the cities of the south, no more sit judging, with pipes and brandy, in the ice tower of Avignon. The all-hiding earth has received him, the bloated tilebeard, may we never look upon his like again. Jordan one names, the other hundreds are not named. Alas, they, like confused faggots, lie massed together for us, counted by the cartload, and yet not an individual faggot twig of them but had a life and history, and was cut, not without pangs as when a Kaiser dies. Least of all cities can lions escape. Lions, which we saw in dread sunblaze, that autumn night when the powder tower sprang aloft, was clearly verging towards a sad end. Inevitable, what could desperate valor and Prissy do? Dubois Krantz, deaf as destiny, stern as doom, capturing their redoubts of cotton bags, hemming them in, ever closer, with his artillery lava? Never would that ci devant d'Autechamp arrive, never any help from Blankenberg. The Lyons Jacobins were hidden in cellars, the Girondin municipality waxed pale, in famine, treason and red fire. Prissy drew his sword, and some 1,500 with him, sprang to saddle, to cut their way to Switzerland. They cut fiercely, and were fiercely cut, and cut down, not hundreds, hardly units of them ever saw Switzerland. Lyons, on the 9th of October, surrenders at discretion. It has become a devoted town. Abbé Lamourette, now Bishop Lamourette, whilom legislator, he of the old Baiser Lamourette or Delilah kiss, is seized here, is sent to Paris to be guillotined. He made the sign of the cross, they say, when Tyndall intimated his death sentence to him, and died as an eloquent constitutional bishop. But woe now to all bishops, priests, aristocrats and federalists that are in Lyons. The manies of Chalier are to be appeased. The Republic, maddened to the Sibylline pitch, has bared her right arm. Behold. Representative Fouché, it is Fouché of Nantes, a name to become well known. He with a patriot company goes duly, in wondrous procession, to raise the corpse of Chalier. An ass, housed in priest's cloak, with a mitre on its head, and trailing the mass books, some say the very Bible, at its tail, paces through Lyons streets, escorted by multitudinous patriotism, by clangor as of the pit, towards the grave of martyr Chalier. The body is dug up and burnt, the ashes are collected in an urn, to be worshipped of Paris patriotism. The holy books were part of the funeral pile, their ashes are scattered to the wind. Amid cries of vengeance. Vengeance ! Which, writes Fouché, shall be satisfied. Lyons in fact is a town to be abolished, not Lyons henceforth but commune affranchi, township freed, the very name of it shall perish. It is to be razed, this once great city, if Jacobinism prophesy right, and a pillar to be erected on the ruins, with this inscription, Lyons rebelled against the Republic, Lyons is no more. Fouché, Coutonne, Caillou, convention representatives succeed one another, there is work for the hangman, work for the hammerman, not in building. The very houses of aristocrats, we say, are doomed. Paralytic Coutonne, born in a chair, taps on the wall with emblematic mallet, saying, La loi te frappe, the law strikes thee. Masons, with wedge and crowbar, begin demolition. Crash of downfall, dim ruin and dust clouds fly in the winter wind. Had Lyons been of soft stuff, it had all vanished in those weeks, and the Jacobin prophecy had been fulfilled. But towns are not built of soap froth, Lyons town is built of stone. Lyons, though it rebelled against the Republic, is to this day. Neither have the Lyons Girondins all one neck, that you could dispatch it at one swoop. Revolutionary tribunal here, and military commission, guillotining, fusilating, do what they can, the kennels of the Place des Terreaux run red, mangled corpses roll down the Rhone. Caillou d'Urboy, they say, was once hissed on the Lion stage, but with what sibilation, of world catcall or hoarse Tartarian trumpet, will ye hiss him now, in this his new character of convention representative, not to be repeated. 209 men are marched forth over the river, to be shot in mass, by musket and cannon, in the promenade of the Brateau. It is the second of such scenes, the first was of some 70. The corpses of the first were flung into the Rhone, but the Rhone stranded some, so these now, of the second lot, are to be buried on land. Their one long grave is dug, they stand ranked, by the loose mould ridge, the younger of them singing the Marseillaise. Jacobin National Guards give fire, but have again to give fire, and to take the bayonet and the spade, for though the doomed all fall, they do not all die, and it becomes a butchery too horrible for speech. So that the very nationals, as they fire, turn away their faces. Caillou, snatching the musket from one such national, and levelling it with unmoved countenance, says it is thus a republican ought to fire. This is the second fusillade, and happily the last, it is found too hideous, even inconvenient. They were 209 marched out, One escaped at the end of the bridge, yet behold, when you count the corpses, they are 210. Read us this riddle, O Kalu. After long guessing, it is called to mind that two individuals, here in the Brato ground, did attempt to leave the rank, protesting with agony that they were not condemned men, that they were police commissaries, which two we repulsed, and disbelieved, and shot with the rest. Such is the vengeance of an enraged republic. Surely this, according to Barrere's phrase, is justice under rough forms, sude forms acerbs. But the republic, as Fouché says, must march to liberty over corpses. Or again as Barrere has it, none but the dead do not come back, il n'y a que les morts qui n'y reviennent pas. Terror hovers far and wide, the guillotine goes not ill. But before quitting those southern regions, over which history can cast only glances from aloft, she will alight for a moment, and look fixedly at one point, the siege of Toulon. Much battering and bombarding, heating of balls in furnaces or farmhouses, serving of artillery well and ill, attacking of Aulus passes, Forts Malbosquet, there has been, as yet to small purpose. We have had General Carto here, a whilom painter elevated in the troubles of Marseille, General Doppet, a whilom medical man elevated in the troubles of Piedmont, who, under Krantz, took Lyons but cannot take Toulon. Finally we have General Dugommier, a pupil of Washington. Convention representatives also we have had, Barrases, Salicettes, Robespierre the Younger, also an artillery chef de brigade, of extreme diligence, who often takes his nap of sleep among the guns, a short taciturn, olive-complexioned young man, not unknown to us, by name Bonaparte, one of the best artillery officers yet met with. And still Toulon is not taken. It is the 4th month now, December in slave style, Frostarius or Frimaire, in new style, and still their cursed red-blue flag flies there. They are provisioned from the sea, they have seized all heights, felling wood and fortifying themselves, like the Coney, they have built their nest in the rocks. Meanwhile, Frostarius has not yet become Snows or Nevos, when a council of war is called, instructions have just arrived from government and Salut Public. Carnot, in Salut Public, has sent us a plan of siege, on which plan General Dugommier has this criticism to make, Commissioner Salicetti has that, and criticisms and plans are very various, when that young artillery officer ventures to speak, the same whom we saw snatching sleep among the guns, who has emerged several times in this history, the name of him Napoleon Bonaparte. It is his humble opinion, for he has been gliding about with spyglasses, with thoughts, that a certain Fort Leguillet can be clutched, as with Lion Spring, on the sudden, wherefrom, were it once ours, the very heart of Toulon might be battered, the English lines were, so to speak, turned inside out, and Hood and our natural enemies must next day either put to sea, or be burnt to ashes. Commissioners arch their eyebrows, with negatory sniff, who is this young gentleman with more wit than we all? Brave veteran Dugommier, however, thinks the idea worth a word, questions the young gentleman, becomes convinced, and there is for issue, try it. On the taciturn bronze countenance, therefore, things being now all ready, there sits a grimmer gravity than ever, compressing a hotter central fire than ever. Yonder, thou seest, is Fort Leguillet, a desperate Lion Spring, yet a possible one, this day to be tried. Tried it is, and found good. By stratagem and valor, stealing through ravines, plunging fiery through the fire tempest, Fort Leguillet is clutched at, is carried, the smoke having cleared, wiser the tricolor fly on it, the bronze-complexioned young man was right. Next morning, Hood, finding the interior of his lines exposed, his defenses turned inside out, makes for his shipping. Taking such royalists as wished it on board with him, he weighs anchor, on this 19th of December 1793, Toulon is once more the Republic's. Cannonading has ceased at Toulon, and now the guillotining and fusillading may begin. Civil horrors, truly, but at least that infamy of an English domination is purged away. Let there be civic feast universally over France, so reports Barrere, or Painter David, and the Convention assist in a body. Nay, it is said, these infamous English, with an attention rather to their own interests than to ours, set fire to our storehouses, arsenals, warships in Toulon harbor, before weighing, some score of brave warships, the only ones we now had. However, it did not prosper, though the flames spread far and high, some 2 ships were burnt, not more, the very galley slaves ran with buckets to quench. These same proud ships, ships Lorient and the rest, have to carry this same young man to Egypt first, not yet can they be changed to ashes, or to sea nymphs, not yet to skyrockets, O ship Lorient, nor became the prey of England, before their time. And so, over France universally, there is civic feast and high tide, and Toulon sees fusillading, grape shotting in mass, as Lyons saw, and death is poured out in great floods, Vamia grands flots and 12,000 masons are requisitioned from the neighboring country, to raise Toulon from the face of the earth. For it is to be raised, so reports Barrère, all but the national shipping establishments, and to be called henceforth not Toulon, but Port of the Mountain. There in black death cloud we must leave it, hoping only that Toulon too is built of stone, that perhaps even 12,000 masons cannot pull it down, till the fit pass. One begins to be sick of death vomited in great floods. Nevertheless hearest thou not, O reader, for the sound reaches through centuries, in the dead December and January nights, over Nantes town, confused noises, as of musketry and tumult, as of rage and lamentation, mingling with the everlasting moan of the Loire waters there? Nantes town is sunk in sleep, but Representant Carrier is not sleeping, the wool-capped company of Marat is not sleeping. Why unmoors that flat-bottomed craft, that Gabar, about 11 at night, with 90 priests under hatches? They are going to Belle Isle? In the middle of the Loire stream, on signal given, the Gabar is scuttled, she sinks with all her cargo. Sentence of deportation, writes Carrier, was executed vertically. The 90 priests, with their Gabar coffin, lie deep. It is the first of the noieties, what we may call drownages, of Carrier, which have become famous forever. Guillotining there was at Nantes, till the headsman sank worn out, then fusillading in the plain of Saint Mauve, little children fusillade, and women with children at the breast, children and women, by the 120, and by the 500, so hot as la Vendée, till the very Jacobins grew sick, and all but the company of Marat cried, Hold! Wherefore now we have got no aiding, and on the 24th night of Frosterius year 2, which is 14th of December 1793, we have a second noyade, consisting of 138 persons. Or why waste a Gabar, sinking it with them? Fling them out, with their hands tied, pour a continual hail of lead over all the space, till the last struggler of them be sunk. Unsound sleepers of Nantes, and the sea villages thereabouts, hear the musketry amid the night winds, wonder what the meaning of it is. And women were in that Gabar, whom the red nightcaps were stripping naked, who begged, in their agony, that their smocks might not be stripped from them. And young children were thrown in, their mothers vainly pleading, Wolflings, answered the company of Marat, who would grow to be wolves. By degrees, daylight itself witnesses noieties, women and men are tied together, feet and feet, hands, and flung in, this they call mariage républicain, republican marriage. Cruel is the panther of the woods, the she-bear bereaved of her whelps, but there is in man a hatred crueler than that. Dumb, out of suffering now, as pale swan corpses, the victims tumble confusedly seaward along the Loire stream, the tide rolling them back, clouds of ravens darken the river, wolves prowl on the shoal places. Carrier writes, Quel torrent révolutionnaire, what a torrent of revolution. For the man is rabid, and the time is rabid. These are the noieties of Carrier, 25 by the tale, for what is done in darkness comes to be investigated in sunlight, not to be forgotten for centuries. We will turn to another aspect of the consummation of Sansculottism, leaving this as the blackest. But indeed men are all rabid, as the time is. Representative Lebon, at Arras, dashes his sword into the blood flowing from the guillotine, exclaims, How I like it. Mothers, they say, by his order, have to stand by while the guillotine devours their children. A band of music is stationed near, and, at the fall of every head, strikes up its Sayura. In the Burg of Bedouin, in the Orange region, the Liberty Tree has been cut down overnight. Representative Maynier, at Orange, hears of it, burns Bedouin Burg to the last dog hutch, guillotines the inhabitants, or drives them into the caves and hills. Republic one and indivisible. She is the newest birth of nature's waste inorganic deep, which men name Orcus, chaos, primeval night, and knows one law, that of self-preservation. Tigresse nationale, meddle not with a whisker of her. Swift crushing is her stroke, look what a paw she spreads, pity has not entered her heart. Prudhomme, the dull blustering printer and able editor, as yet a Jacobin editor, will become a renegade one, and publish large volumes on these matters, crimes of the Revolution, adding innumerable lies withal, as if the truth were not sufficient. We, for our part, find it more edifying to know, one good time, that this Republic and National Tigress is a new birth, a fact of nature among formulas, in an age of formulas, and to look, oftenest in silence, how the so genuine nature fact will demean itself among these. For the formulas are partly genuine, partly delusive, supposititious, we call them, in the language of metaphor, regulated modeled shapes, some of which have bodies and life still in them, most of which, according to a German writer, have only emptiness, glass eyes glaring on you with a ghastly affectation of life, and in their interior unclean accumulation of beetles and spiders. But the fact, let all men observe, is a genuine and sincere one, the sincerest of facts, terrible in its sincerity, as very death. Whatsoever is equally sincere may front it and beard it, but whatsoever is not. Chapter 3.54. Carmagnole complete. Simultaneously with this topet black aspect, there unfolds itself another aspect, which one may call a topet red aspect, the destruction of the Catholic religion, and indeed, for the time being of religion itself. We saw Rom's new calendar establish its 10th day of rest, and asked, what would become of the Christian Sabbath? The calendar is hardly a month old, till all this is set at rest. Very singular, as Mercier observes, last Corpus Christi Day 1792, the whole world, and sovereign authority itself, walked in religious gala, with a quite devout air. Boucher-Legendre, supposed to be irreverent, was like to be massacred in his gig, as the thing went by. A Gallican hierarchy, and church formulas seemed to flourish, a little brown-leaved or so, but not browner than of late years or decades, to flourish, far and wide, in the sympathies of an unsophisticated people, defying philosophism, legislature and the encyclopédie. Far and wide, alas, like a brown-leaved Vallombrosa, which waits but one whirlblast of the November wind, and in an hour stands bare. Since that Corpus Christi Day, Brunswick has come, and the emigrants, and La Vendée, and 18 months of time, to all flourishing, especially to brown-leaved flourishing, there comes, were it never so slowly, an end. On the 7th of November, a certain citoyen Perens, curate of Boissys-le-Bertrand, writes to the convention that he has all his life been preaching a lie, and is grown weary of doing it, wherefore he will now lay down his curacy and stipend, and begs that an August convention would give him something else to live upon. Mention honorable, shall we give him? Or reference to Committee of Finances? Hardly is this got decided, when Gus Gobel, constitutional bishop of Paris, with his chapter, with municipal and departmental escort in red nightcaps, makes his appearance, to do as Perens has done. Gus Gobel will now acknowledge no religion but liberty, therefore he doffs his priest gear and receives the fraternal embrace. To the joy of departmental Montmoreau, of municipal Chaumettes and Heberts, of Vincent and the Revolutionary Army. Chaumette asks, ought there not, in these circumstances, to be among our intercalary days sans breeches, a feast of reason? Proper surely. Let atheist Maréchal, Lalande, and little atheist Naigeon rejoice, let Clootz, speaker of mankind, present to the convention his evidences of the Mohammedan religion, a work evincing the nullity of all religions, with thanks. There shall be universal republic now, thinks Clootz, and one God only, the peuple. The French nation is of gregarious imitative nature, it needed but a fugal motion in this matter, and Gus Gobel, driven by municipality and force of circumstances, has given one. What curé will be behind him of Boissys, what bishop behind him of Paris? Bishop Gregoire, indeed, courageously declines, to the sound of we force no one, let Gregoire consult his conscience, but Protestant and Romish by the 100 volunteer in assent. From far and near, all through November into December, till the work is accomplished, come letters of renegation, come curates who are learning to be carpenters, curates with their new wedded nuns, has not the day of reason dawned, very swiftly and become noon? From sequestered townships comes addresses, stating plainly, though in patois dialect, that they will have no more to do with the black animal called curé, animal noir, appel curé. Above all things there come patriotic gifts, of church furniture. The remnant of bells, except for tocsin, descend from their belfries, into the national melting pot, to make cannon. Censers and all sacred vessels are beaten broad, of silver, they are fit for the poverty-stricken mint, of pewter, let them become bullets to shoot the enemies of du genre humain. Dalmatics of plush make breeches for him who has none, linen stoles will clip into shirts for the defenders of the country, old clothesmen, Jew or heathen, drive the briskest trade. Chalier's ass procession, at Lyons, was but a type of what went on, in those same days, in all towns. In all towns and townships as quick as the guillotine may go, so quick goes the axe and the wrench, sacristies, lutrines, altar rails are pulled down, the mass books torn into cartridge papers, men dance the Carmagnole all night about the bonfire. All highways jingle with metallic priest tackle, beaten broad, sent to the convention, with a poverty-stricken mint. Good St. Genevieve's chaussee is let down, alas, to be burst open, this time, and burned on the Place de Grève. St. Louis' shirt is burned, might not a defender of the country have had it? At Saint-Denis town, no longer Saint-Denis but Franciade, patriotism has been down among the tombs, rummaging, the Revolutionary Army has taken spoil. This, accordingly, is what the streets of Paris saw. Most of these persons were still drunk, with the brandy they had swallowed out of chalices, eating mackerel on the Patnas. Mounted on asses, which were housed with priests' cloaks, they rained them with priest souls, they held clutched with the same hand communion cup and sacred wafer. They stopped at the doors of dramshops, held out ciboriums, and the landlord, stoop in hand, had to fill them thrice. Next came mules high laden with crosses, chandeliers, censers, holy water vessels, hyssops, recalling to mind the priests of Cybele, whose panniers, filled with the instruments of their worship, served at once as storehouse, sacristy and temple. In such equipage did these profaners advance towards the convention. They entered there, in an immense train, ranged in 2 rows, all masked like mummers in fantastic sacerdotal vestments, bearing on hand barrows their heaped plunder, ciboriums, suns, candelabras, plates of gold and silver. The address we do not give, for indeed it was in strophes, sung viva voce, with all the parts, Danton glooming considerably in his place, and demanding that there be prose and decency in future. Nevertheless the captors of such spolia opima crave, not untouched with liquor, permission to dance the Carmagnole also on the spot, whereto an exhilarated convention cannot but accede. Nay, several members, continues the exaggerative Mercier, who was not there to witness, being in limbo now, as one of Duperret's 73, several members, quitting their curule chairs, took the hand of girls flaunting in priests' vestures, and danced the Carmagnole along with them. Such old hallowtide have they, in this year, once named of grace, 1793. Out of which strange fall of formulas, tumbling there in confused welter, betrampled by the patriotic dance, is it not passing strange to see a new formula arise? For the human tongue is not adequate to speak what triviality run distracted there is in human nature. Black mumbo-jumbo of the woods, and most Indian wow-wows, one can understand, but this of Procureur Anaxagoras whilom John Peter Chomet. We will say only, man is a born idol worshipper, sight worshipper, so sensuous imaginative is he, and also partakes much of the nature of the ape. For the same day, while this brave Carmagnole dance has hardly jigged itself out, there arrived Procureur Chomet and municipals and departmentals, and with them the strangest freightage, a new religion. Demoiselle Candé, of the opera, a woman fair to look upon, when well rouged, she, borne on palanquin shoulder high, with red woolen nightcap, in azure mantle, garlanded with oak, holding in her hand the pike of the Jupiter Pupla, sails in, heralded by white young women girt in tricolor. Let the world consider it. This, O National Convention wonder of the universe, is our new divinity, goddess of reason, worthy, and alone worthy of revering. Nay, were it too much to ask of an august national representation that it also went with us to the ci devant cathedral called of Notre Dame, and executed a few strophes in worship of her? President and secretaries give Goddess Candé, borne at due height round their platform, successively the fraternal kiss, whereupon she, by decree, sails to the right hand of the President and there alights. And now, after due pause and flourishes of oratory, the convention, gathering its limbs, does get under way in the required procession towards Notre Dame, Reason, again in her litter, sitting in the van of them, borne, as one judges, by men in the Roman costume, escorted by wind music, red nightcaps, and the madness of the world. And so straightway, Reason taking seat on the high altar of Notre Dame, the requisite worship or quasi-worship is, say the newspapers, executed, National Convention chanting the hymn to Liberty, words by Chenier, music by Gossec. It is the first of the feasts of Reason, first communion service of the new religion of Chomet. The corresponding festival in the church of Saint Eustache, says Mercier, offered the spectacle of a great tavern. The interior of the choir represented a landscape decorated with cottages and baskets of trees. Round the choir stood tables overloaded with bottles, with sausages, pork puddings, pastries and other meats. The guests flowed in and out through all doors, whosoever presented himself took part of the good things, children of 8, girls as well as boys, put hand to plate, in sign of liberty, they drank also of the bottles, and their prompt intoxication created laughter. Reason sat in azure mantle aloft, in a serene manner, cannoneers, pipe in mouth, serving her as acolytes. And out of doors, continues the exaggerative man, were mad multitudes dancing round the bonfire of chapel balustrades, of priests and cannon stalls, and the dancers, I exaggerate nothing, the dancers nigh bare of breeches, neck and breast naked, stockings down, went whirling and spinning, like those dust vortexes, forerunners of tempest and destruction. At St. Gervais Church again there was a terrible smell of herrings, section or municipality having provided no food, no condiment, but left it to chance. Other mysteries, seemingly of a Cabirique or even Paphian character, we heave under the veil, which appropriately stretches itself along the pillars of the aisles, not to be lifted aside by the hand of history. But there is one thing we should like almost better to understand than any other, what Reason herself thought of it, all the while. What articulate words poor Mrs. Mommereau, for example, uttered, when she had become ungoddessed again, and the bibliopolist and she sat quiet at home, at supper. For he was an earnest man, bookseller Momoro, and had notions of agrarian law. Mrs. Momoro, it is admitted, made one of the best goddesses of reason, though her teeth were a little defective. And now if the reader will represent to himself that such visible adoration of reason went on all over the Republic, through these November and December weeks, till the church woodwork was burnt out, and the business otherwise completed, he will feel sufficiently what an adoring Republic it was, and without reluctance quit this part of the subject. Such gifts of church spoil are chiefly the work of the Armée Révolutionnaire, raised, as we said, some time ago. It is an army with portable guillotine, commanded by playwright Ronson in terrible mustachios, and even by some uncertain shadow of Usher Maillard, the old Bastille hero, leader of the Menades, September Man in Grey. Clerk Vincent of the War Office, one of Pache's old clerks, with a head heated by the ancient orders, had a main hand in the appointments, at least in the staff appointments. But of the marchings and retreatings of these 6,000 no Xenophon exists. Nothing, but an inarticulate hum, of cursing and sooty frenzy, surviving dubious in the memory of ages. They scour the country round Paris, seeking prisoners, raising requisitions, seeing that edicts are executed, that the farmers have thrashed sufficiently, luring church bells or metallic virgins. Detachments shoot forth dim, towards remote parts of France, nay new provincial revolutionary armies rise dim, here and there as Carrier's company of Murat, as Tallien's Bordeaux troop, like sympathetic clouds in an atmosphere all electric. Ronson, they say, admitted, in candid moments, that his troops were the elixir of the rascality of the earth. One sees them drawn up in marketplaces, travel-plashed, rough-bearded, in Carmagnole complete. The first exploit is to prostrate what royal or ecclesiastical monument, crucifix or the like, there may be, to plant a cannon at the steeple, fetch down the bell without climbing for it, bell and belfry together. This, however, it is said, depends somewhat on the size of the town. If the town contains much population, and these perhaps of a dubious choleric aspect, the Revolutionary Army will do its work gently, by ladder and wrench, nay perhaps will take its billet without work at all, and, refreshing itself with a little liquor and sleep, pass on to the next stage. Pipe in cheek, sabre on thigh, in Carmagnole complete. Such things have been, and may again be. Charles II sent out his Highland host over the western Scotch Whigs. Jamaica planters got dogs from the Spanish Main to hunt their maroons with. France too is bescoured with a devil's pack, the baying of which, at this distance of half a century, still sounds in the mind's ear. Chapter 3.5.v. Like a thundercloud. But the grand, and indeed substantially primary and generic aspect of the consummation of terror remains still to be looked at. Nay, blinkered history has for most part all but overlooked this aspect, the soul of the whole, that which makes it terrible to the enemies of France. Let despotism and Cimmerian coalitions consider. All French men and French things are in a state of requisition, 14 armies are got on foot, patriotism, with all that it has of faculty in heart or in head, in soul or body or breeches pocket, is rushing to the frontiers, to prevail or die. Busy sits Carnot, in salut public, busy for his share, in organizing victory. Not swifter pulses that guillotine, in dread systole diastole in the Place de la Révolution, then smites the sword of patriotism, smiting Samaria back to its own borders, from the sacred soil. In fact the government is what we can call revolutionary, and some men are à la hauteur, on a level with the circumstances, and others are not à la hauteur, so much the worse for them. But the anarchy, we may say, has organized itself, society is literally overset, its old forces working with mad activity, but in the inverse order, destructive and self-destructive. Curious to see how all still refers itself to some head and fountain, not even an anarchy but must have a center to revolve round. It is now some 6 months since the Committee of Salut Public came into existence, some 3 months since Danton proposed that all power should be given it and a sum of 50 millions, and the government be declared revolutionary. He himself, since that day, would take no hand in it, though again and again solicited, but sits private in his place on the mountain. Since that day, the 9, or if they should even rise to 12 have become permanent, always re-elected when their term runs out. Salut Public, Sûreté Générale have assumed their ulterior form and mode of operating. Committee of Public Salvation, as supreme, of General Surety, as subaltern, these like a lesser and greater council, most harmonious hitherto, have become the center of all things. They ride this whirlwind, they, raised by force of circumstances, insensibly, very strangely, thither to that dread height, and guide it, and seem to guide it. Stranger set of cloud compellers the earth never saw. A Robespierre, a Biot, a Collot, Couthon, Sanjou, Not to mention still meaner Mars, the Deers, in Sûreté Générale, these are your cloud compellers. Small intellectual talent is necessary, indeed where among them, except in the head of Carnot, busied organizing victory, would you find any? The talent is one of instinct rather. It is that of divining aright what this great dumb whirlwind wishes and wills, that of willing, with more frenzy than any one, what all the world wills. To stand at no obstacles, to heed no considerations human or divine, to know well that, of divine or human, there is one thing needful, triumph of the Republic, destruction of the enemies of the Republic. With this one spiritual endowment, and so few others, it is strange to see how a dumb inarticulately storming whirlwind of things puts, as it were, its reins into your hand, and invites and compels you to be leader of it. Hard by, sits a municipality of Paris, all in red nightcaps since the 4th of November last, a set of men fully on a level with circumstances, or even beyond it. Sleep Mayor Pache, studious to be safe in the middle, Chaumets, Heberts, Varlets, and Henriot their great commandant, not to speak of Vincent the war clerk, of Montmoreau's, Dobson's, and such like, all intent to have churches plundered, to have reason adored, suspects cut down, and the revolution triumph. Perhaps carrying the matter too far? Danton was heard to grumble at the civic strophes, and to recommend prose and decency. Robespierre also grumbles that in overturning superstition we did not mean to make a religion of atheism. In fact, your Chaumet and company constitute a kind of hyper-Jacobinism, or rabid faction d'enragés, which has given orthodox patriotism some umbrage, of late months. To know a suspect on the streets, what is this but bringing the law of the suspect itself into ill odor? Men half frantic, men zealous overmuch, they toil there, in their red nightcaps, restlessly, rapidly, accomplishing what of life is allotted them. And the 44,000 other townships, each with revolutionary committee, based on Jacobin daughter society, enlightened by the spirit of Jacobinism, quickened by the 40 sous a day. The French Constitution spurned always at anything like 2 chambers, and yet behold, has it not verily got 2 chambers? National Convention, elected for one, Mother of Patriotism, self-elected, for another. Mother of Patriotism has her debates reported in the Moniteur, as important state procedures, which indisputably they are. A second chamber of legislature we call this Mother Society, if perhaps it were not rather comparable to that old Scotch body named Lords of the Articles, without whose origination, and signal given, the so-called Parliament could introduce no bill, could do no work? Robespierre himself, whose words are a law, opens his incorruptible lips copiously in the Jacobins' Hall. Smaller Council of Salut Public, Greater Council of Sûreté Générale, all active parties, come here to plead, to shape beforehand what decision they must arrive at, what destiny they have to expect. Now if a question arose, which of those 2 chambers, Convention or Lords of the Articles, was the stronger? Happily they as yet go hand in hand. As for the National Convention, truly it has become a most composed body. Quench now the old effervescence, the 73 locked-in ward, once noisy friends of the Girondins sunk all into silent men of the plain, called even frogs of the marsh, crapaud's du marais. Addresses come, revolutionary church plunder comes, deputations, with prose, or strophes, these the Convention receives. But beyond this, the Convention has one thing mainly to do, to listen what Salut Public proposes, and say, yea. Vizier followed by Chabot, with some impetuosity, declared, one morning, that this was not the way of a free assembly. There ought to be an opposition side, a côté droit, cried Chabot, if none else will form it, I will. People say to me, you will all get guillotined in your turn, first you and Vizier, then Danton, then Robespierre himself. So spake the disfrocked, with a loud voice. Next week, Vizier and he lie in the Abbaye, wending, one may fear, towards Tinville and the Axe, and people say to me what seems to be proving true. Vizier's blood was all inflamed with revolution fever, with coffee and spasmodic dreams. Chabot, again, how happy with his rich Jew-Austrian wife, late Fräulein Frey. But he lies in prison, and his 2 Jew-Austrian brothers-in-law, the bankers Frey, lie with him, waiting the urn of doom. Let a national convention, therefore, take warning, and know its function. Let the convention, all as one man, set its shoulder to the work, not with bursts of parliamentary eloquence, but in quite other and serviceable ways. Convention commissioners, what we ought to call representatives, representants on mission, fly, like the Herald Mercury, to all points of the territory, carrying your behests far and wide. In their round hat plumed with tricolor feathers, girt with flowing tricolor taffeta, in close frock, tricolor sash, sword and jackboots, these men are powerfuller than king or kaiser. They say to whomso they meet, do, and he must do it, all men's goods are at their disposal, for France is as one huge city in siege. They smite with requisitions and forced loan, they have the power of life and death. Sancho and Lebas order the rich classes of Strasbourg to strip off their shoes, and send them to the armies where as many as 10,000 pairs are needed. Also, that within 24 hours, 1,000 beds are to be got ready, wrapped in matting, and sent under way. For the time presses. Like swift bolts, issuing from the fuliginous Olympus of Salou public rush these men, oftenest in pairs, scatter your thunder orders over France, make France one enormous revolutionary thundercloud. Chapter 3.5.5 Do thy duty. Accordingly, alongside of these bonfires of church balustrades, and sounds of fusillading and noyating, there rise quite another sort of fires and sounds, smithy fires and proof follies for the manufacture of arms. Cut off from Sweden and the world, the Republic must learn to make steel for itself, and, by aid of chemists, she has learnt it. Towns that knew only iron, now know steel, from their new dungeons at Chantilly, aristocrats may hear the rustle of our new steel furnace there. Do not bells transmute themselves into cannon, iron stanchions into the white weapon, arme blanche, by sword cutlery? The wheels of Langres scream, amid their sputtering fire halo, grinding mere swords. The stithies of Charleville ring with gun-making. What say we, Charleville? 258 forges stand in the open spaces of Paris itself, 140 of them in the Esplanade of the Invalides, 54 in the Luxembourg Garden. So many forges stand, grim smiths beating and forging at lock and barrel there. The clockmakers have come, requisition, to do the touch holes, the hard solder and filework. 5 great barges swing at anchor on the Seine stream, loud with boring, the great press drills grating harsh thunder to the general ear and heart. And deaf stockmakers do gouge and rasp, and all men bestir themselves, according to their cunning, in the language of hope. It is reckoned that 1,000 finished muskets can be delivered daily. Chemists of the Republic have taught us miracles of swift tanning, the cordwainer bores and stitches, not of wood and pasteboard, or he shall answer it to Tinville. The women sew tents and coats, the children scrape surgeons' lint, the old men sit in the marketplaces, able men are on march, all men in requisition, from town to town flutters, on the heavens winds, this banner, the French people risen against tyrants. All which is well. But now arises the question, what is to be done for saltpeter? Interrupted commerce and the English Navy shut us out from saltpeter, and without saltpeter there is no gunpowder. Republican science again sits meditative, discovers that saltpeter exists here and there, though in attenuated quantity, that old plaster of walls holds a sprinkling of it, that the earth of the Paris cellars holds a sprinkling of it diffused through the common rubbish, that were these dug up and washed, saltpeter might be had. Whereupon swiftly, see. The citoyens, with upshoved bonnet rouge, or with doffed bonnet, and hair toil wetted, digging fiercely, each in his own cellar, for saltpeter. The earth heap rises at every door, the citoyen with hod and bucket carrying it up, the citoyens, pith in every muscle, shoveling and digging, for life and saltpeter. Dig my braves, and right well speed ye. What if saltpeter is essential the Republic shall not want. Consummation of sansculottism has many aspects and tints, but the brightest tint, really of a solar or stellar brightness, is this which the armies give it. That same fervor of Jacobinism which internally fills France with hatred, suspicions, scaffolds and reason worship, does, on the frontiers, show itself as a glorious pro patria mori. Ever since Dumouriez's defection, 3 convention representatives attend every general committee of Salou has sent them, often with this laconic order only, do thy duty, fais ton devoir. It is strange, under what impediments the fire of Jacobinism, like other such fires, will burn. These soldiers have shoes of wood and pasteboard, or go booted in hayropes. In dead of winter, they skewer a base mat round their shoulders, and are destitute of most things. What then? It is for rights of Frenchhood, of manhood, that they fight. The unquenchable spirit, here as elsewhere, works miracles. With steel and bread, says the convention representative, one may get to China. The generals go fast to the guillotine, justly and unjustly. From which what inference? This among others, that ill success is death, that in victory alone is life. To conquer or die is no theatrical palabra, in these circumstances, but a practical truth and necessity. All Girondism, halfness, compromise is swept away. Forward, ye soldiers of the Republic, captain and man. Dash with your Gallic impetuosity, on Austria, England, Prussia, Spain, Sardinia, Pitt, Coburg, York, and the devil in the world. Behind us is but the guillotine, before us is victory, apotheosis and millennium without end. See accordingly, on all frontiers, how the sons of night, astonished after short triumph, do recoil, the sons of the Republic flying at them, with wild Sierra or Marseille aux armes, with the temper of Catamountain, or demon incarnate, which no son of night can stand. Spain, which came bursting through the Pyrenees, rustling with Bourbon banners, and went conquering here and there for a season, falters at such catamountain welcome, draws itself in again, too happy now were the Pyrenees impassable. Not only does Dugommier, conqueror of Toulon, drive Spain back, he invades Spain. General Dugommier invades it by the eastern Pyrenees, General Muller shall invade it by the western. Shall, that is the word, Committee of Salut Public has said it, Representative Cavaignac, on mission there, must see it done. Impossible. Cries Muller, infallible. Answers Cavaignac. Difficulty, impossibility, is to no purpose. The committee is deaf on that side of its head, answers Cavaignac, n'entend pas de cette oreille là. How many wantest thou, of men, of horses, cannons? Thou shalt have them. Conquerors, conquered or hanged, forward we must. Which things also, even as the representative spake them, were done. The spring of the new year sees Spain invaded, and redoubts are carried, and passes and heights of the most scarp description. Spanish field officerism struck mute at such catamountain spirit, the cannon forgetting to fire. Swept are the Pyrenees, town after town flies up, burst by terror or the petard. In the course of another year, Spain will crave peace, acknowledge its sins and the Republic, nay, in Madrid, there will be joy as for a victory, that even peace is got. Few things, we repeat, can be notabler than these convention representatives, with their power more than kingly. Nay, at bottom are they not kings, able men, of a sort, chosen from the 749 French kings, with this order, do thy duty? Representative Levasseur, of small stature, by trade a mere Pacific surgeon accoucheur, has mutinies to quell, mad hosts, mad at the doom of Castine, bellowing far and wide, he alone amid them, the one small representative, small, but as hard as flint, which also carries fire in it. So too, at Hunskuten, far in the afternoon, he declares that the battle is not lost, that it must be gained, and fights, himself, with his own obstetric hand, horse shot under him, or say on foot, up to the haunches in tidewater, cutting staccato and passato there, in defiance of water, earth, air, and fire, the choleric little representative that he was. Whereby, as natural, Royal Highness of York had to withdraw, occasionally at full gallop, like to be swallowed by the tide, and his siege of Dunkirk became a dream, realizing only much loss of beautiful siege artillery and of brave lives. General Achard, it would appear, stood behind a hedge, on this Hunskuten occasion, wherefore they have since guillotined him. A new General Jordan, late Sergeant Jordan, commands in his stead. He, in long-winded battles of Wattigny, murderous artillery fire mingling itself with sound of revolutionary battle hymns, forces Austria behind the Sambre again, has hopes of purging the soil of liberty. With hard wrestling, with artillerying and sierraing, it shall be done. In the course of a new summer, Valenciennes will see itself beleaguered, Condé beleaguered, whatsoever is yet in the hands of Austria beleaguered and bombarded, nay, by convention decree, we even summon them all either to surrender in 24 hours, or else be put to the sword, a high saying, which, though it remains unfulfilled, may show what spirit one is of. Representative Drouet, as an old dragoon, could fight by a kind of second nature, but he was unlucky. Him, in a night foray at Maubeuge, the Austrians took alive, in October last. They stripped him almost naked, he says, making a show of him, as king taker of Varennes. They flung him into carts, sent him far into the interior of Samaria, to a fortress called Spitzberg on the Danube River, and left him there, at an elevation of perhaps 150 feet, to his own bitter reflections. Reflections, and also devices. For the indomitable old dragoon constructs wing machinery, of paperkite, saws window bars, determines to fly down. He will seize a boat, will follow the river's course, land somewhere in Crim Tartary, in the Black Sea or Constantinople region, a la Sinbad. Authentic history, accordingly, looking far into Samaria, discerns dimly a phenomenon. In the dead night watches, the Spitzberg sentry is near fainting with terror. Is it a huge vague portent descending through the night air? It is a huge national representative old dragoon, descending by paperkite, too rapidly, alas. For Drouet had taken with him a small provision store, 20 pounds weight or thereby, which proved accelerative, so he fell, fracturing his leg, and lay there, moaning, till day dawned, till you could discern clearly that he was not a portent but a representative. Or see Sanju, in the lines of Weissenberg, though physically of a timid apprehensive nature, how he charges with his Alsatian peasants armed hastily for the nonce, the solemn face of him blazing into flame, his black hair and tricolor hat taffeta flowing in the breeze. These our lines of Weissenberg were indeed forced, and Prussia and the emigrants rolled through, but we reforced the lines of Weissenberg, and Prussia and the emigrants roll back again still faster, hurled with bayonet charges and fiery Sayura ing. Ci devant Sergeant Pichegru, ci devant Sergeant Oche, risen now to be generals, have done wonders here. Tall Pichegru was meant for the church, was teacher of mathematics once, in Brienne school, this remarkablest pupil there was the boy Napoleon Bonaparte. He then, not in the sweetest humor, enlisted exchanging ferula for musket, and had got the length of the halberd, beyond which nothing could be hoped, when the Bastille barriers falling made passage for him, and he is here. Oche bore a hand at the literal overturn of the Bastille. He was, as we saw, a sergeant of the Garde Française, spending his pay in rushlights and cheap editions of books. How the mountains are burst, and many an Enceladus is disimprisoned, and captains founding on 4 parchments of nobility, are blown with their parchments across the Rhine, into lunar limbo. What high feats of arms, therefore, were done in these 14 armies, and how, for love of liberty and hope of promotion, low-born valor cut its desperate way to generalship, and, from the central Carnot and salute public to the outmost drummer on the frontiers, men strove for their republic. Let readers fancy. The snows of winter, the flowers of summer continue to be stained with warlike blood. Gaelic impetuosity mounts ever higher with victory, spirit of Jacobinism weds itself to national vanity, the soldiers of the Republic are becoming, as we prophesied, very sons of fire. Barefooted, barebacked, but with bread and iron you can get to China. It is one nation against the whole world, but the nation has that within her which the whole world will not conquer. Samaria, astonished, recoils faster or slower. All round the Republic there rises fiery, as it were, a magic ring of musket volleying in Sayura ing. Majesty of Prussia, as Majesty of Spain, will by and by acknowledge his sins in the Republic, and make a peace of bail. Foreign commerce, colonies, factories in the East and in the West, are fallen or falling into the hands of sea-ruling Pitt, enemy of human nature. Nevertheless, what sound is this that we hear, on the 1st of June, 1794, sound of as war thunder born from the ocean too, of tone most piercing? War thunder from off the breastwaters, Villarejoix and English how, after long maneuvering have ranked themselves there, and are belching fire. The enemies of human nature are on their own element, cannot be conquered, cannot be kept from conquering. 12 hours of raging cannonade, sun now sinking westward through the battle smoke, 6 French ships taken, the battle lost, what ship soever can still sail, making off. But how is it, then, with that Vengeur ship, she neither strikes nor makes off? She is lamed, she cannot make off, strike she will not. Fire rakes her fore and aft, from victorious enemies, the Vengeur is sinking. Strong are ye, tyrants of the sea, yet we also are we weak. Lo! All flags, streamers, jacks, every rag of tricolor that will yet run on rope, fly rustling aloft, the whole crew crowds to the upper deck, and, with universal soul-maddening yell, shouts Vive la République, sinking, sinking. She staggers, she lurches, her last drunk whirl, ocean yawns abysmal, down rushes the Vengeur, carrying Vive la République along with her, unconquerable, into eternity. Let foreign despots think of that. There is an unconquerable in man, when he stands on his rights of man. Let despots and slaves and all people know this, and only them that stand on the wrongs of man tremble to know it. So has history written, nothing doubting, of the sunk Vengeur. Reader. Mendes Pinto, Munchausen, Cagliostro, Salmanazar have been great, but they are not the greatest. Oh Barrère, Barrère, Anacreon of the guillotine. Most inquisitive pictorial history, in a new edition, ask again, how is it with the Vengeur, in this its glorious suicidal sinking, and, with resentful brush, dash a bend sinister of contumelious lampblack through the inlet? Alas, alas! The Vengeur, after fighting bravely, did sink altogether as other ships do, her captain and above 200 of her crew escaping gladly in British boats, and this same enormous inspiring feat, and rumor of sound most piercing, turns out to be an enormous inspiring nonentity, extant nowhere save, as falsehood, in the brain of Barrère. Actually so. Founded, like the world itself, on nothing, proved by convention report, by solemn convention decree and decrees, and wooden model of the Vengeur, believed, bewept, besung by the whole French people to this hour, it may be regarded as Barrère's masterpiece, the largest, most inspiring piece of Blague manufactured, for some centuries, by any man or nation. As such, and not otherwise, be it henceforth memorable. Chapter 3.57. Flame Picture. In this manner, mad blazing with flame of all imaginable tints, from the red of topaz to the stellar bright, blazes off this consummation of sansculottism. But the 100th part of the things that were done, and the 1000th part of the things that were projected and decreed to be done, would tire the tongue of history. Statue of the Pupilla Souverain, highest Strasbourg steeple, which shall fling its shadow from the Pont Neuf over Jardin National and Convention Hall, enormous, in painter David's head. With other the like enormous statues not a few, realized in paper decree. For, indeed, the Statue of Liberty herself is still but plaster in the Place de la Révolution. Then equalization of weights and measures, with decimal division, institutions, of music and of much else, institute in general, School of Arts, School of Mars, Élève de la Patrie, normal schools, amid such gun boring, altar burning, saltpeter digging, and miraculous improvements in tannery. What, for example, is this that engineer chap is doing, in the Park of Vincennes? In the Park of Vincennes, and onwards, they say, in the Park of Le Pelletier Saint Fargeau the assassinated deputy, and still onwards to the heights of Écune and further, he has scaffolding set up, has posts driven in, wooden arms with elbow joints are jerking and fugling in the air, in the most rapid mysterious manner. Citoyens ran up suspicious. Yes, O citoyens, we are signaling, it is a device this, worthy of the Republic, a thing for what we will call far writing without the aid of post bags, in Greek, it shall be named telegraph, telegraph sacré. Answer citoyenism, for writing to traitors, to Austria? And tears it down. Chap had to escape, and get a new legislative decree. Nevertheless he has accomplished it, the indefatigable chap, this is far writer, with its wooden arms and elbow joints, can intelligibly signal, and lines of them are set up, to the north frontiers and elsewhither. On an autumn evening of the year 2, far writer having just written that Condé town has surrendered to us, we send from Tuileries Convention Hall this response in the shape of decree, the name of Condé is changed to Nord Libre, North Free. The army of the north ceases not to merit well of the country. To the admiration of men. For lo, in some half hour, while the convention yet debates, there arrives this new answer, I inform thee, J. Tenants, Citizen President, that the decree of convention, ordering change of the name Condé into North Free, and the other declaring that the army of the north ceases not to merit well of the country, are transmitted and acknowledged by telegraph. I have instructed my officer at Lille to forward them to North Free by express. Signed, Chap. Or see, over Fleurus in the Netherlands, where General Jordan, having now swept the soil of liberty, and advanced thus far, is just about to fight, and sweep or be swept, things there not in the heavens vault, some prodigy, seen by Austrian eyes and spyglasses, in the similitude of an enormous windbag, with netting and an enormous saucer depending from it? A Jove's balance, O ye Austrian spyglasses? One saucer hole of a Jove's balance, your poor Austrian scale having kicked itself quite aloft, out of sight? By heaven, answer the spyglasses, it is a Montgolfier, a balloon, and they are making signals. Austrian cannon battery barks at this Montgolfier, harmless as dog at the moon, the Montgolfier makes its signals, detects what Austrian ambuscade there may be, and descends at its ease. What will not these devils incarnate contrive? On the whole, is it not, O reader, one of the strangest flame pictures that ever painted itself, flaming off there, on its ground of guillotine black? And the nightly theatres are 23, and the salons de danse are 60, full of mere égalité, fraternité, and carmagnole. And section committee rooms are 48, redolent of tobacco and brandy, vigorous with 20 pence a day, coercing the suspect. And the houses of arrest are 12 for Paris alone, crowded and even crammed. And at all turns, you need your certificate of civism, be it for going out, or for coming in, nay without it you cannot, for money, get your daily ounces of bread. Dusky red-capped bakers' queues, wagging themselves, not in silence. For we still live by maximum, in all things, waited on by these two, scarcity and confusion. The faces of men are darkened with suspicion, with suspecting, or being suspect. The streets lie unswept, the ways unmended. Law has shut her books, speaks little, save impromptu, through the throat of Tinville. Crimes go unpunished, not crimes against the revolution. The number of foundling children, as some compute, is doubled. How silent now sits royalism, sits all aristocratism, respectability that kept its gig. The honor now, and the safety, is to poverty, not to wealth. Your citizen, who would be fashionable, walks abroad, with his wife on his arm, in red wool nightcap, black shag spencer and carmagnole complete. Aristocratism crouches low, in what shelter is still left, submitting to all requisitions, vexations, too happy to escape with life. Ghastly shadows stare on you by the wayside, disroofed, diswindowed, which the national house broker is peeling for the lead in Ashlar. The old tenants hover disconsolate, over the Rhine with Condé, a spectacle to men. Ci devant seigneur, exquisite in palate, will become an exquisite restaurateur cook in Hamburg. Ci devant madame, exquisite in dress, a successful marchand des modes in London. In Newgate Street, you meet M. Le Marquis, with a rough deal on his shoulder, ads and jack plain underarm. He has taken to the joiner trade, it being necessary to live, faut vivre. Higher than all Frenchmen the domestic stock jobber flourishes, in a day of paper money. The farmer also flourishes, farmers' houses, says Mercier, have become like pawnbrokers' shops, all manner of furniture, apparel, vessels of gold and silver accumulate themselves there, bread is precious. The farmer's rent is paper money, and he alone of men has bread, farmer is better than landlord, and will himself become landlord. And daily, we say, like a black spectre, silently through that life tumult, passes the revolution cart, writing on the walls its Mene, Mene, thou art weighed and found wanting. A spectre with which one has grown familiar. Men have adjusted themselves, complaint issues not from that death tumbril. Weak women and sea devons, their plumage and finery all tarnished, sit there, with a silent gaze, as if looking into the infinite black. The once light lip wears a curl of irony, uttering no word, and the tumbril fares along. They may be guilty before heaven, or not, they are guilty, we suppose, before the revolution. Then, does not the Republic coin money of them, with its great axe? Red nightcaps howl dire approval, the rest of Paris looks on, if with a sigh, that is much, fellow creatures whom sighing cannot help, whom black necessity and Tinville have clutched. One other thing, or rather two other things, we will still mention, and no more, the blonde perukes, the tannery at Meudon. Great talk is of these Paris blondes, O reader, they are made from the heads of guillotined women. The locks of a duchess, in this way, may come to cover the scalp of a cordwainer, her blonde German Frankism his black Gaelic pull, if it be bald. Or they may be worn affectionately, as relics, rendering one suspect. Citizens use them, not without mockery, of a rather cannibal sort. Still deeper into one's heart goes that tannery at Meudon, not mentioned among the other miracles of tanning. At Meudon, says Montcaillard with considerable calmness, there was a tannery of human skins, such of the guillotined as seemed worth flaying, of which perfectly good wash leather was made, for breeches, and other uses. The skin of the men, he remarks, was superior in toughness, consistence, and quality to chamois, that of women was good for almost nothing, being so soft in texture. History looking back over cannibalism, through Purchas's Pilgrims and all early and late records, will perhaps find no terrestrial cannibalism of a sort on the whole so detestable. It is a manufactured, soft-feeling, quietly elegant sort, a sort perfect. Alas then, is man's civilization only a wrappage, through which the savage nature of him can still burst, infernal as ever? Nature still makes him, and has an infernal in her as well as a celestial.